With further steps of escalation in the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, both Russia and Iran are wrestling with what kind of response to present in the case of Russia against a plot recently disclosed by the Ukrainian intelligence to kill Russia's president at a public ceremony in late July, and in the Gaza war, Iran pondering its next move after the assassination of a Hamas leader in Tehran by Israel. For more on that, we go to Moscow to speak with analyst Mark Sleboda. Mark, how do we sift through all of this? It just seems like a very dangerous time with all kinds of, tripwires set waiting for some klutz to go bullet at China shopping their way through the field. Where are we headed?
Yeah. Obviously, Iran intends to respond in a significant way to the apparent Israeli assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas political chief, and by the way, the chief negotiator on the Hamas side that the U.S. was supposedly working with, and were supposedly sincere about wanting to fashion a ceasefire between the Israeli government and Hamas. Supposedly, we're told that the Biden administration was committed to this, and they were very sincere about this, and they were chastising Israel. Well, Israel just went and assassinated the chief negotiator on the other side.
It sounds like what the Ukrainians did when they were negotiating back in April of 2022.
Except they assassinated one of their own negotiators,
right.
Denis Kirif. Yeah, that was apparently some type of internal intelligence services feud going on, although it's still a very murky affair. Anyway, this is a huge insult, right? This is, first of all, it's a huge embarrassment and security lapse for Iran. There are competing stories. The New York Times and the West seem to put together a story of a bomb secreted in a residence that evidently Haniyeh had been using every time he came to Tehran, which would be a security lapse in itself, as far as I'm concerned, if he continually uses the same facility. But anyway, others say that this is a bit of disinformation and it was a short-range projectile, perhaps fired by a drone, or even potentially an anti-tank weapon fired from a relatively short distance. We don't know. We don't know a whole lot of details. The Iranians haven't released them, but it is a huge embarrassment to them. He was a guest of the Iranian state for the inauguration of their new president, Pezeshkian, whom we are told in the Western mainstream media is a quote-unquote reformer who wanted better relations with the West. And then this gets dropped on his lap the minute he becomes president. One of the guests to his inauguration, a political, not a military official, is assassinated by the Israelis under their own house. That is a huge thing in Muslim culture. There is a very sacred idea of a guest right and being protected under the house. How are they going to respond? That's the question. It is not clear at this moment. There is a lot of supposition. According to what the Biden administration put out, the attack already should have happened, and then lately they've admitted they don't know. They don't know what it's going to be, when it's going to happen. They don't know anything about it, or at least if they do, they're not fessing up to it. We're going on a week here since the attack took place. And there is a lot of speculation about what Iran may be doing, why they're waiting, whether they are indecisive with the new president, There is some indication that they may be waiting for Russian military supplies, including electronic warfare and air defense assets, to arrive and set them up to then blunt any Israeli a counter retaliation or even a preemptive attack. There's also suggestion they may be waiting for a particular day of disaster on the Jewish calendar, which I believe is in the next couple of days. There is the USA Today floated the idea today that the U.S. is now worried that they may try an unconventional response, like a tit for tat assassination of their own. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I would consider that a unconventional response. That would be a directly symmetrical response.
Right.
But regardless, if they launch an assault, it will be a long-range air assault. It will be conducted not just by Iran, but by their axis of resistance allies in the region as well, which means Hezbollah, which means the Houthis, the Ansar movement in Yemen. It means Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq and Syria, and several other smaller Shiite groups in those areas as well. And it probably will be much larger than what occurred in April of this year, when Iran did in response to the Israeli provocation of the attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus.
Right.
It will be, i.e., it won't be a forecast pantomime where they arrange beforehand with the United States what they're going to hit, when they're going to hit, and what they're going to hit it with. And it will probably be larger, and it may not just be a one-shot affair. It may be something that happens over multiple strikes, over days or longer. We don't know. This is all speculation that is coming out. But we know that the Israeli leaders are already renovating old bunkers underneath their cities for their political leadership, and they appear to be pretty worried, and they're floating the idea of a preemptive attack. We also know that the Russian head of the National Security Council and formerly the defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, was just in Iran in the last couple of days. He was there to meet with his equivalent, the head of the Iranian Supreme Security Council, and also to meet with the new president, Masoud Pezeshkian. And this is unconfirmed. It's being reported. It's not official. It's not announced by the Russian or Iranian media, but it has been talked about extensively in the Israeli media and the Ukrainian media that Russia has supplied Iran with their most advanced electronic warfare complexes, the Murmansk BN, which is something about a 10 large trucks, right? And about 7 of those put up extremely long radio antennas. They don't look like much, but they can go up to like 30 yards in the air. And then like a control truck, a power truck, and so forth. It is an extremely powerful electronic warfare asset that can do a whole host of things. But its specialty is blocking high frequency signals that are used for U.S. and allied military communications, and that would include weapons targeting and GPS signals. It can also be used for powerful radio interception. It can be used to supposedly very effective detection of stealth aircraft like the F-35. And a whole lot of other things it can do. And it has a range of some 5,000 to 8,000 kilometers, which is just madness. And just for an idea, the distance between Iran and Israel is only about 2,000 kilometers. So that's well within the range. There's also some chatter about possibly providing Iskander ballistic missiles, although I'm not so sure about that myself. I believe that Russia would provide defensive capabilities to Iran, but not necessarily offensive for use against Israel because of the complex business-like relationship that Russia has had with Israel, at least in the past few years, even if that's deteriorated recently. And the New York Times is talking about large amounts of Russian air defense assets that are being provided to Iran. Now, Iran already fields one Russian S-300 air defense system, but supposedly this could mean more. And there's an open question, would these then be manned by Russian troops? Because would Iran have the amount of specialists on hand already trained to operate them? That seems to me somewhat unlikely. So that would be a level of Russian involvement. It puts us clearly back in a Cold War era classical proxy war, where the U.S., the United Kingdom, France, other allies in the region like Jordan are supporting Israel, and Russia, and probably to a lesser extent China, and of course the Axis of Resistance are supporting Iran. That is a dangerous new level. It kind of, in many ways, I think it's an overlap of the conflict that is occurring in Ukraine, if you view it more as a global confrontation against U.S.-led Western hegemony's attempt to extend itself. Well, this is very much could be considered part and parcel of a wider geopolitical conflict that is going on. Just in the past week, Russian forces in Mali were ambushed by Tuareg separatists that are now apparently supported by the Kiev regime.
Right.
They attacked Wagner Russian security contractors, and there's a possibility that the West may have also provided data. And Mali and Niger have already severed relations with Ukraine, accusing them of supporting terrorism over the incident. And this is the Ukrainian battlefield migrating to the African continent. Things are getting crazy, and Israel may be very much just a part of the Israeli-Iranian conflict, maybe part and parcel of this whole thing.
Yep, almost like a reconfiguration in the making, and all kinds of
world order setting conflict.
A reset button. Hey,
a reset.
Get Hillary Clinton's reset button. Mark, thank you for helping us try to untangle some of this spaghetti, and I guess we'll pick it up next week where we left off, if there's anything left.
Yes.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.